I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 5:16. Roll call. Tom Barney.
Here.
Eric Brown.
Here.
And Michael Loth, myself, I'm here. Item 3, agenda revisions and approval.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tom Barney, second by Eric Brown. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries. Item 4, approval of minutes. Approval of the May 6, 2024 meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the May 6, 2024 meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Eric Brown, second by Tom Barney. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Item 5, consent review and discuss, 5A, May vouchers. I know there's a couple questions. Brittany.
Am I on? Yes. I received about 7 questions that I will review tonight. One of the questions we received was regarding the purchase of 10 tables, 10 training tables. It was not written that there was 10 purchased in there, so it looked like there was one table purchased for a total of $3,150. There was 10, so that correction was made on our end. So
Okay,
sorry
very
for
good.
that. That was for Kennedy Middle School. The next question was regarding $1,521 paid to Lippert Tile for pool tile replacement. The question was regarding the ongoing issues that we've had with the pool tile. This is not pertaining to the pool tile. The issue we have with the pool tile is regarding the grout in the pool tile, and this was for actual cracked tiles throughout the gym, or excuse me, throughout the pool. If there are water bottles, because of the metal water bottles that students carry, we have now had signs posted on the pool, all over the pool, that the metal water bottles are not allowed in there, because if they drop, they break the tile. So they should not have those in there anymore, and this shouldn't be an issue, but other things happen and tiles break. So this is for that repair, not for the grout issues that we've had in the past.
Very good. We did hear about that during the building tours. I just, didn't know that that's what that was.
And I'm going to give an update at the next building committee regarding the agreement that we have with Lippert Tile on the, I'll give more detail at the next building committee regarding that. The next question that I received was regarding Premier Flooring. It was for GHS Flooring. The question was regarding, did this go through the Finance Committee? It did not go through the Finance Committee. In January of 2023, we did have water damage at the high school. It was due to GSF staff leaving the water on and it being on overnight and flooding our high school. With that said, the work was done last summer, but it was going back and forth between insurance companies. So our portion was only about $7,000, and the rest of it was paid by us, but then reimbursed by GSF's insurance company. So with that, we did not bring in, the total was over $15,000, you are correct, but with the portion of it being less than $7,000 for the district, it did not come to the Finance Committee. And the only reason that we had to pay for a portion of it was because the portion that was flooded was connected to another section that we were going to replace in the future anyway. We were going to replace the whole section, but the insurance company covered the portion that was flooded, and we just continued up the ramp that was on the lower level of the high school, and I believe that that was spoke about during your building tour as well.
I believe it was. Thank you.
The next question I received was regarding an invoice for $15,342.50 for Trafira LLC, which is the Google Workspace Education Plus. The reason that did not come to the Finance Committee was because this is the second year of a 3-year agreement, and it did go to the Finance Committee in on June 6th of 2023 for the 3-year agreement. So again, you'll see this amount next year, and it's not going to come to the Finance Committee again next
Okay.
year because of the agreement.
Okay, very good.
The next question I received was regarding invoice for $24,160 for the Department of Public Instruction 2024 Educator Effectiveness. That, again, did not come to the Finance Committee, even though it was over $15,000. This is a software for evaluations. It is a direct reimbursement of a grant. School districts pay $80 per teaching staff,
8,
80.
8, 8, isn't it only $8?
Well, I did the math, and it,
Okay, I stand corrected, I apologize.
otherwise we have twice as many teachers as I thought we did. So I believe it's $80 per teacher. And it is for their evaluation program. School districts have to have it. So we pay the check, and then they reimburse the exact dollar amount back to us. It's not really a choice that the district has to not have an evaluation, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's part of the educator effectiveness program for evaluation of teaching staff.
Okay, very good.
The next question I received was regarding aluminum benches for GHS pool locker rooms. That was on a district credit card. The total was $3,232. When we had the referendum, there were benches installed in our locker rooms connected to the pool. About 2 years ago, we realized that the bottom of the benches were rusting the floor because of all the water that's in the pool area. So last summer, we disassembled those, and then our maintenance department tried to paint them with a type of paint that would not rust. That did not work. They started rusting again, so I said, we are just buying new benches. So we didn't buy the top of the bench, we just bought the legs of the benches. So that's what that was for. The next question I received was regarding a check for a wide range of items. The question was for check 4281, has several items, all with the same description. This is where the student activity accounts throughout the year, the district purchases stuff, and then the student activity accounts reimburse the district. So you can see that the check number only is 4 digits. That means that it is a check that was cut by the high school bookkeeper. If it was cut by the district, there's longer check numbers. So this is the student activity accounts. Instead of writing multiple checks throughout the year, they will write one big check to pay for their expenses back to the school district. That makes sense. And then the final question I believe that I received was one regarding $500. It was listed as female golf, or no, sorry, the account number was under the function code of female golf, but the description didn't seem to match golf. Those were for Yeti coolers, and I believe those coolers are to hold water. So during the time in which they are out in the weather, they would have water to drink. So that's what the purchase was for that. And I believe those are the only questions I had, unless you have further questions.
I can't think of anything else. Sounds like the Finance Committee was hitting on all 8 cylinders over the weekend. Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent to payment vouchers as presented and reviewed.
I will second.
okay, motion by Tom Barney, second by Eric Brown. Nice job, Brittany, thank you for that. And any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Okay, next item is item 6, and that is reports and updates. A, May variance report. Brittany Altendorf, please.
In front of the committee today is the May 31st monthly variance report. Due to the fact that the committee meeting is near the beginning of the month, we did not completely reconcile this month. We receive our bank statements within the first week of the month, so it usually takes us about a week to reconcile everything within the bank statement. So just be aware that this is not the complete final reconciliation for the May 31st. There will be small adjustments, but nothing large. All checks show up in here, and the majority of the revenue, it's basically we have not received our or we have not recorded, we have not recorded our interest on our bank statements, but the small items, so it's not going to make that big of a difference on the report. As of right now, the district has spent $38.5 million, which is about $1.6 million more than this time last year. This time last year, we spent about $36.8 million. And then revenue this time last year was approximately $110,000 less than this time last year. So in May of 2024, the district received about $33.6 million compared to May of 2023, in which we received about $33.5 million at that time. Some items that are still outstanding for the rest of the year, as we have 1 month left for the rest of the fiscal year, are our June, July, and August, which is our summer payrolls. So we do pay teaching staff June, July, and August, and July and August payrolls are charged back to June. So you can see that there is a larger outstanding amount in salaries, about the $5 million range, and that is for the next 3 months. That's not just for the month of June that you have outstanding. So you'll see those chargebacks throughout or in your next report. Employee benefits is a little less than it was this time last year. Purchase services is consistent around the 60% range. We are still spending throughout the month of June, and we will continue to spend until July 15th. Any invoice that shows up after July 15th will then be moved into the next school year, but anything July 15th and earlier will go back into the current school year. We are spending consistently in the special ed budget compared to the previous year, and then revenues, as you know, are coming in on a scheduled payments, so those are coming in pretty close to they were in the previous year. A little less, like we've spoke about regarding property taxes. Property taxes are coming in a little slower than they have previous years, so we are expected to get the larger payment in August. One of the items that I spoke about at one of our last meetings was regarding the borrow we might need during the summer months due to purchasing the Redium curriculum, which is using a portion of our fund balance, as well as the delayed payments of property taxes, but we are not going to have to borrow for the summer months before we get property taxes. So that was good news in the world of the business office, that we are not borrowing again for summer. Any questions regarding the variance report for May 31st?
No. Yeah, a couple things.
Okay.
On the first page, I was just curious, middle paragraph, operating revenues. Near the end of that paragraph, you mention annually there is a transfer of funds from the general fund to cover costs that are not covered with state and federal funds. This amount exceeds $5 million. The transfer will be reflected in the June variance report. So can you talk about that just a little bit? 5 million is a large number to most of us.
Sure. So the special education budget is not allowed to have a balance, negative or positive, at the end of the year. So that budget receives federal funding as well as state funding grants. Anything that is not received or covered by that revenue then has to be covered by a transfer from the general fund. Obviously, the district expenses for special education is higher than what we receive in federal funds, so the general fund has to cover it. It's around the $5 million mark every year. They are trying to increase the amount we receive, or all districts, not just us, receive in federal funding for special education. It has increased, I believe, a few years ago, it was about the 25% range, and now it's 33.3%. And that is based on your previous year expenses. So you'd get 33.3% of whatever your previous year expenses is in the next year's aid amount.
Okay, and then just the last question. Last paragraph, operating fund balance, is the very last line mentions a negative balance of $4,849,000 and some change there. Is that what we're talking about when you say $5 million, or is that a different number?
That's a different number, and that's just a snapshot of when we looked at our fund balance as of May 31st. That's not the amount you have in your bank account. That's just the amount that we have on our general ledger at that point in time. So it's not like if we're in the negative on our general ledger, we don't have funds in our bank account to pay the bills that are coming in. It's just basically, and that has nothing to do with the transfer. It just seems to be a close number that month.
Yeah, right, okay. So I think we talked about doing the variance report about a month late. So I think in the beginning of July, we won't really have a variance report, and then the beginning of August will cover the month of June?
Similar. So in the month of July, if I looked correctly, normally I would do my variance report for June. Sometimes I wouldn't have it in July because our audit isn't until August, so having one in July is not final. So sometimes I skip the month of July, which would make sense with the conversation that we had, even though our committee, I believe, is at the end of July, if I'm correct, for this coming July. But starting in August, you are correct. In August, I would normally do the end of July. But because we moved our committee meetings up a week, we will have the same issue where the business office won't have that month reconciled. So working with my chair, we are going to have a month lag. We would rather have a month lag information than information that's not correct. So in September, I will do July, and then everything will move forward.
Right, very good. Mr. Loth would like the numbers to be exact rather than an estimate each month, and exact and a month late, I think, is best. So that's what we're planning on doing. Okay, very good. I think we can move on unless anyone else has questions. Russ Ewert.
I just wanted to say thank you for the hard work that led to not having to do the short-term borrowing, and also just the flexibility in the schedule and reporting to meet with the new meeting schedule. So thank you for that.
Right. Yeah, I think you did mention here that you didn't believe we would have to borrow for the summer session here, or?
Correct,
That's
I
true.
believe, yes, you're correct. Last month, we were projecting we weren't going to have to borrow, but we wanted to make sure as we were getting closer to the end of the school year, and with our projection to the year end, we're not going to have to borrow.
Okay.
It's not a belief anymore, we're not going to.
Okay, very good. All right, I think that concludes the May variance report. Let's move on. We do not have an item 7, unfinished business. Item 8, new business. 8A, 2024-2025 preliminary budget, and that is Ms. Altendorf also.
Prior to July 15th every year, as I stated in the last agenda item, on July 15th, we start spending for the next school year. So prior to July 15th of every year, we should have the board approve the preliminary budget. It is obviously not the final budget. That happens in October of every year. It is just giving us the authority to continue with business. So continue to receive revenue if it comes, and receive expense and pay our invoices. So this is just the preliminary budget. It has a lot of assumptions in it, and it will be finalized throughout the months until the end of October when the board approves the final budget. Because this is the second year of the biennial budget, there is a lot more known items than unknown items. So with the second year of the biennial budget, we already know the per pupil allocation, which is a very large number to know, a very important number to know. And we also know, as I stated, the special education funding, which is the 33.3%. We know it's going to be that. We don't know what the previous year expenses are because the year's not over. So we're projecting what the previous year expenses are based on what we're going to budget for the 33.3% of revenue next year. The other number that we also know is the dollar amount we are receiving for vouchers and open enrollment in out students, even though we don't know the number of students. So again, there are a lot of projections in this budget, but there are more knowns than if it was the first year of the biennial budget. Items that we don't know at this time is obviously student enrollment, open enrollment counts, voucher counts. We don't know our final state aid. We don't know our final grant allocations, and we don't know our final insurance rates. Those are larger numbers that we don't know that are all projected within the preliminary budget. We have been doing the zero-based budgeting process since 2001. There are a lot of districts that are having to make larger cuts this year. We are not one of those districts that has to make larger cuts based on the way that we have done budgeting at the zero-based budgeting process for the last couple of years, which is very beneficial to our district. Some of the areas that I will go over in my presentation today are listed on your summary sheet. So student enrollment right now, we're projecting to have 34 students less than we did the previous year. We're doing something a little different than we did the previous year. We are having the teaching and learning or curriculum department update what they believe the enrollment's going to be. They're projecting forward what they believe their enrollment is going to be based on students that we have today, rolling them up and also working with the sites on students they think that are going to be coming in next year. So we're doing that. We're just off a little bit based on some of the counts that we have to use when we calculate our membership versus the actual students that are in Skyward. So we're still figuring that out, but the 34 students is, we believe, a good projection. I believe that the 34 is going to be less than what it is. It's going to be less students. But right now, that's what the projection is. State aid.
Hey, Brittany, Eric, looks like
Just
you.
a clarifying question on that. Decrease of 34 students equals 44 full-time equivalent students. Kindergartners count as half.
Kindergartners count in half, but again, there's a open enrollment in, open enrollment out. The calculation that we have to do adjusts the FTE.
Okay.
So you're absolutely right that 4K students count as half in kindergarten, 4K students count as a 0.6, and preschool or early childhood students count as a 0.5. So you are correct there. In reality, that number should be less, but because open enrolled in and out students and 220 students and special education in and out students are taken into our calculation, it always doesn't come out to be less FTE than people.
Okay, that leads into my next question. Earlier this year, we approved 15 open?
Correct.
That number's in there also?
That number is currently in there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we projected a little less than 15 just in case that all of them didn't come in as the board approved. So
They have
we
until
are
the end of the
waiting.
month to accept those seats as well, so letters have been sent. So that number, the full 15 seats were drawn.
Yep.
We're waiting to hear if they've accepted the schools we designated for those open kindergarten positions.
Okay.
Just to
Because
be
that's our
clear, that's 15 open enrollment in, I don't know if you said the whole thing, Eric, just to be clear, 15 in. Is there any chance, I know the number you were looking for, Dr. Reuter, was higher than that. Is there any chance we can do more, should do more, or are we just fine with the 15?
I think we're fine with the 15 because they've been designated to one school, and based on class size policy, if all 15 or minimally 6 accept, we even our sections out. So We wouldn't want to take the gamble of offering more seats and then having too many kids and then looking for a teacher at the last minute.
Okay, very good. All right, now that we have completely derailed your thought process, I think we're good.
Then, state aid. So state aid in our projected, and I'll go through this later on, these are just some bullet points. State aid is projected to go up a little over almost 19%. I will go over that when I go through the equalization aid calculation. Revenue limit per member, this was in the biennial budget that we would receive $325 more last year than the previous year, and again, another $325 this coming school year over our current school year. It is built into the budget that you would get $325 on top of each year moving forward. But again, there's going to be a new biennial budget for 25, 27, and that could change. But right now, it's built in that you would get $325 on top of every previous year. So that would be great if that would stay in there, but again, it could change for your next biennial budget.
And to be clear on that, that's from the state. That's money from the
Correct,
state.
that's the state biennial
Yeah.
budget.
Okay.
The next item is dental insurance and health insurance. Currently, looking at our projections, I have a 0% built in for dental. We are under our current budget, and we're projecting to be under next year's budget based on the premiums that we've set, and the premiums are set to stay exactly the same as they are our current year. And then, and again, please remember that this increase in health insurance is for the 25 calendar year. So health and dental are on calendar years, and obviously we're on a fiscal year. So if we were projecting to see a 20% increase on health insurance in 2025, I would only be budgeting a 10% increase on health insurance because I'm only taking 6 months of the 12 months that the 20% would be, just so you are aware of how the budgeting works there. Capital projects, as you are aware, we have been increasing our capital projects fund, which is Fund 41, by $50,000 each year. It would be our goal to increase that and then keep it at the $600,000 range. A couple years ago, we did reduce the capital project budget, and now we have been increasing it by $50,000 each year. So next year, it would be $550,000, and that's what's built into this budget. Property evaluations, there is an average increase over all our municipalities of an average of a 7% increase. That is based on a bunch of different scenarios, based on previous years. That can change. That will not change our budget. That will change the property taxes and the mill rate and the levy. It will not change the overall revenue or expenditures within our budget. Open enrollment in and out, we briefly spoke about this. I have a 16% increase in, and I have a 4% increase out. The majority of that is the in is the students for the 4K that the board approved, and the out is keeping our out number flat. But because we are getting an amount, because the state set the in and out per pupil amount higher, that's what the 4% is based on. Just that increase, not the amount of students. The reason I didn't increase the amount of students is because looking at our current year budget, we projected more students going out than did, so I wouldn't have an increase in out students if I didn't really reach the number that we already projected for this year. So the only increase in there is the actual dollar amount that the state increased it for the per pupil amount. And then vouchers, I briefly spoke about. This is vouchers for private schools. We are an in and an out, so we receive the same amount of revenue as we do out. So it's on our revenue limit. Property taxes pay for it. It comes into us, and then we spend the same dollar amount out, but it has to be built into our revenue limit calculation. So that, as a history over the past couple of years, is increasing then 22% based on our past experience that we've had. Categorical aid, the majority of our stuff that we receive categorical aid on, for example, transportation, library aid, those type of things don't drastically change. So right now I have a built-in with a 0% increase or a flat rate on any categorical aid that would change. And because it is the second biennial, they're not changing anything within transportation or anything we would receive that on. And then finally, due to the fact that we are projecting the decrease of the 34 students, we see a decline in our enrollment. So you have a declining enrollment exemption, which the revenue limit gives you, because if a school district would have a drastic decline in enrollment, and they would have then a drastic decline in revenue, which a lot of school districts can't take on in a one-year period. So the revenue limit calculation gives you a one-year exemption. That is a very fine line, because you could lose a couple students, then I lose the declining enrollment. But then if you lose a couple more students, you'd receive more revenue than you'd receive in your declining enrollment. So sometimes it's a good thing to get more students, but it might not be a good thing that year. It would be a good thing in future years, because if we hit the mark where we lose the 271,000 declining enrollment exemption, you do not receive that much in revenue. So right now, it's in a good place. I know we're declining in enrollment in the projection, but if we would get more students, we could lose that, and then we would have a deficit right there.
And does filling those seats with vouchers affect that?
I'm sorry?
Does filling the seats with vouchers, open enrollment, does that affect that? Is that part of the
Vouchers
calculation?
are the out.
Or is it just residents?
Yeah, vouchers are outgoing, I believe, correct?
So vouchers would be, well, it could be a combination. Vouchers could be students that would possibly be in our district and then go to a private school. That doesn't happen very often. It's more of when a current private school student becomes voucher eligible, where we never had that student to begin with. I can't say the other doesn't happen. People could leave and go to a private school, but majority are when the private school becomes a voucher school, then, but that's an in and an out. That does not, unless the student would leave us to go there and become a voucher student. I guess that could affect both of the buckets.
Okay. What about the seats that we're filling with open enrollment from students outside the district?
The seat, yes, that's both, that's in the calculation for the revenue limit. So yes, that is true.
So if we accepted too many open enrollment ins, we could lose that enrollment exemption amount.
If we accept too many open enrollment ins, no, because the open enrollment ins are removed. I'll give you the easy math of this. So we take in September and January, I'm going to use September as an example, we take a count of how many students are sitting in our seats. Okay, then the calculation says everybody open enrolled in, we remove those from because we're not financially responsible for them. The other district is. Then everybody that open enrolls out of our district is now added back in to our count, because we are financially responsible to pay the other district for those students. So having open enrollment students come in would not necessarily affect us. Open enrollment students out, coming back in, could affect your declining enrollment exemption.
All right, so just to clarify that, if we accepted 300 open enrollment in, that number wouldn't change?
That number shouldn't change because
Okay.
they're being removed from our calculation.
Got it. Thank you.
I went into a little more detail in that section than I planned to, so I probably won't go in as much detail in the rest of the slides, but I'd be happy to go in and answer any questions as I go through this. So the slides that or the attachments that you were provided in your packet are 4 different attachments. The general budget, the general budget, and then the special education budget. The reason those are presented is because those are the majority of our operating budget. So you see the general expenditures and revenue. The first one, I believe that's in your packet, is the general fund revenue. The bigger categories that are in there, I've already kind of touched base on, but you'll see that the open enrollment increased 15.30% if you're looking at the document. That is due to the projection that I talked about previously and bringing some of those students in, as well as the amount per student going up. The next line you can see is a decrease of 55%. We did receive a nurse grant this year. Do you have the document in front of you that I'm referencing?
That's the first one. Yep.
Okay.
F10,
I'm sorry?
is it labeled F10?
Well, they're all F10.
Oh, yes, it says, Fund 10, Fund 10, you should see it, they're all labeled F10.
Yep, entered Fund 10 adjustments.
Hold on just one second. Oh, yes.
In the
So
purple.
yes, it says enter Fund 10 adjustments, and then you
Perfect.
see revenue on the left-hand side, revenues.
Yep.
On the left-hand side, do you see that? Okay. So now I'm looking at the right-hand side, which is the current year budget. So you see a decrease of 55%. We did receive a nurse grant this year, so obviously we had to take the revenue as an expenditures out because we received it this year, so we're not receiving it next year, so that's the decline in the 55% in that area. You see an increase of equalization aid. That's just a portion of the state resources, so, but equalization aid is one of the largest parts of it. Other areas built in there are grants, and as of right now, grants we're just rolling over because we don't know those amounts right now. We will know that final dollar amount on October 15th, so that will be updated at that point in time. The next decrease of 88% is ESSER funding. So we are removing our ESSER revenue because it ends in September of 2024. We are pretty much spent out the majority of all our ESSER funding. So I will be doing an update to the board regarding the final expenses for ESSER in September. So that's why you see the decrease in that area. And then the other one is miscellaneous. The school districts are allowed to put anything in the miscellaneous category that don't fall within another category. And you can see that there is a decrease for next year. We did receive $50,000 worth of insurance money due to the incident in October. We did use that money to increase safety within our buildings. We finalized our night locks. We bought window coverings, so if we have a lockdown, there would be window coverings on all of our classrooms. We did purchase items for go bags. We did, added, what are they called? Fob access to KMS. They did not have a secure entrance, so we added that. We increased some cameras throughout the district, so we used the funds of the $50,000 we received for the insurance. Oh, and we also fixed some of the items that needed to be fixed on KMS, on the building of KMS. Sorry, Kennedy Middle School. So we did use those funds for safety, so we reduced that from the budget.
That's at 35.
That is the 35% reduction. So if you look year over year, we have increased the budget from 23-24 to 24-25, about $1 million over the current year. The next page you should have, I believe, would say Fund 10 adjustments, and it says expenditures on the left-hand side. Okay, some of the areas that I'm going to go through, or I've already gone through, we did, I missed that on the front of the thing, regarding the 4.12% increase. I believe that was on the first page during the summary that I might have missed. So that is built into the budget of 4.12% increase for staff. So you'll see that as well as there are adjustments in staff if there's turnover or staff leaving or in hiring new staff, which we call attrition. You also see in there a 6.38% increase on benefits. That is all employee benefits, so that includes the health 10% that I spoke about earlier. The other areas are pretty much status quo, so I'm not going to go through those. And then you can see down further where it says total insurance and adjustments. Two of the areas that have increased are our workers' comp premium and our property insurance premium. Workers' compensation premium is based on a calculation, so that is not something that you can change. It is a calculation based on the 3 previous years of claims. We did have what would we call a good year fall off for the 3-year rolling, and we had this previous year, we had 2 work comp claims, not this one that we're in, but the previous year before that, 22-23, we did have 2 higher work comp claims, so that year came on to our mod. So that calculation is not able to adjust, but that's built in there. And then property insurance, the quotes we received back, or the increase from our current vendor for property insurance was a large increase, so we are going out for market to see if we can get another insurance company to cover our property insurance, so we're still waiting for that. We should have those quotes back in June. So we'll make that decision, and hopefully that dollar amount goes down. So again, comparable to revenue, you can see that our budgets compared from this current year to 24-25 increased about $1 million. Also included in here are the compensation study adjustments from the compensation study that the district went through this current year. They go into effect on July 1. Any
Okay.
questions regarding the general fund?
I think we're good.
Okay. The next page you should have is Fund 27, which is Special Education Fund, and revenues and expenditures should be on the same page. Okay?
That's it.
Again, the first item that you'll see, which we referenced in a different agenda item, is the transfer from the general fund to the special education fund. So it's projected to be about $5.9 million next year. It was currently budgeted at $5.7 million this current year. We aren't seeing that $5.7 million is coming in exactly as budgeted. It will be a little less than that dollar amount. And then state and federal resources, again, those are referencing the dollar amount we received from the previous year expenditures and the grants we received for the special education fund. We don't know our final grant dollar amounts, but we are projecting them, so those will change prior to October. And then at the bottom of it, similarly to the general fund, you can see total salaries and benefits with increases to both of those. I do have to state that if there's reductions in the special education salaries, I currently have them built into the general fund just because it's easier at the bottom of my sheet to plug them in there. They will be transferred as a reduction in special ed when the actual final budget come through. But currently, I do want you to be aware that they're in the general fund. So it might look like the general fund is reducing more than special ed, but it's not. And then finally, you can see that the expenditures and the revenues are matching, and expenditures and revenues compared to the current year is going up about $600,000 compared to the previous year. Any questions on special education? Otherwise, I'm briefly going to go through the next two. I'm not going to go through the complete detail of the equalization aid and revenue limit. I just want to
Okay.
get some
Yep,
pointers.
I think we're good so far.
Okay, so the next one I believe that you should have on the upper left-hand quarter should say equalization aid. So I stated earlier that equalization aid, or maybe I did not state earlier, but equalization aid is based off of previous year expenditures. It's based off of our district's previous year expenditures as well as all the other districts in the state of Wisconsin's previous year expenditures. Obviously, those are unknown at this time, so we project as well as we can what we think the expenditures are going to be of us as well as other school districts. Recently, we have to upload our financials to the state of Wisconsin a few times a year, and all other school districts have to do this as well. So projecting what the expenses are going to be and what our aid is going to be next year is a lot more accurate than it has been in previous years because all the school districts are uploading their information throughout the year. Before, we were just guessing based off budget, and now we are guessing a little better based off the information that they're uploading.
The marching band's walking by.
Right. The equalization aid and is one of the legs of the federal funding formula, so this isn't necessarily something that we can control. It is, like I stated, based on our enrollment and our previous year expenditures. So you can see on the second page that we are projected to go up in equalization aid revenue. I said earlier that it was the 18.81%. It is on the line almost down at the bottom of the second page. It's called October 15th Certification of Aid. We did increase from 2022-23 to 23-24 by $2.5 million, and we are projected to go from 2023-24 to 24-25, about $3 million. Again, that's a projection, so that might change prior to October. It's, again, based on everybody's spending throughout the state. One thing that the school district and board has been trying to do is we created debt payments where we are paying more debt every other year, and this equalization aid is why we do that. Is at the bottom of this page, you can see there's primary, secondary, and tertiary aid. We are a school district that receives negative tertiary aid. So school districts receive funding. First you receive primary aid. Obviously, then the next tiered, based on your spending, you receive secondary aid. And then based on your spending again, you can receive positive or negative tertiary aid. We are receiving negative tertiary aid. We probably won't be a district that gets out a negative tertiary aid, but you can see by altering our debt payments every other year, we are decreasing that. So we are receiving more aid each year. And then aid and property taxes make up the majority of our revenue. If one goes up, the other one usually goes down. So increasing our state aid would increase our property taxes that we have to receive from the community. Questions on equalization aid? Okay, and then my final item I believe you have in front of you is the revenue limit calculation. I'm not going to go over this in detail. More than likely it's going to change. I'm going to guarantee you it's going to change. So right now we have built in the enrollment. We have built in the summer school dollar enrollment. You can look at the last page of it, and it basically says that our property tax, or you can see the equalization aid in there on line 12A. That's the $20.4 million that you saw on the previous item. If you look down a little further, it says that our general operations levy is going to be the $23.9 million. That is less than the previous year, and it's less than the previous year because you can see that the equalization aid above is larger than the previous year. Does that make sense? Yep, okay. So it says right here on line 14A that we are going to receive less in property taxes than we did the previous year. That's that line. If you look further down, also in there, which is called outside the revenue limit calculation, is debt. So referendum debt and non-referendum debt and capital improvement, which is Fund 41, is considered outside the revenue limit. So if you get authority from your property taxpayers, which is basically going out for referendum, getting an approval, then that is outside, but you get the authority to put it in the revenue limit calculation, even though it's not part of the inside portion of the revenue limit calculation. It's confusing, but basically, if the community does not approve any type of referendum, you wouldn't have anything on the bottom of this page, and you'd have the authority to get that first number. Because the community says, yes, you can get more money, it's considered outside the revenue limit. So, and in total, the total revenue with all that included, you do see increases to the 44 million compared to the 41 million the previous year. But that's including our debt payments and our strategic plan to pay off more debt than the previous year. Questions regarding the revenue limit? Or any of the rest of the budget? Otherwise, this will come back in October. On October 24th, I believe, is the annual meeting and budget hearing.
Okay. I plan for the full board meeting on the Cliff's Notes version of this and redirecting everyone to the Finance Committee meeting for these details. So we'll cover it quick in the full board meeting. Yeah, I think we're good unless there's any questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the 24-25 preliminary budget.
Second.
Okay, motion by Eric Brown and second by Tom Barney to approve the 2024-2025 preliminary budget. Any Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. That motion carries. Okay. We're on to item 8B, monthly purchase requests exceeding $15,000.
Michael, sorry, before we move on, would it be more proper to recommend to the board or to send a positive recommendation to the board for the preliminary budget?
I think we should. Sometimes that text gets added to the full board meeting agenda. And, in between then and now, but it's tonight, it's later. So, yeah, I think we should do a positive recommendation.
Well, properly, do we need to make a motion to rescind the approval
Well,
that we just did?
I think the fact that we just approved it in finance means it's automatically a positive recommendation.
Correct.
So a lot of times, at the full board, I simply add the text. It might not be in our packet, for finance, but it's often tweaked a little bit in the full board packet. So occasionally, you might notice that what I read, because I'm working off of my notes from the finance committee meeting, is just slightly different than what you're seeing in the full board packet. It does happen, because that often gets added. So I think we're
Yeah,
okay.
if you want
on
to
that.
leave it, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure.
What
Yeah,
was
this-
the motion that was approved? Was it as written?
Was as written.
Yeah, this kind of happens all the time, where it doesn't necessarily say positive recommendation.
The as-written motion doesn't say to send it to the full board. And I missed the motion as written is motion to approve the 24-25 preliminary budget.
It's item 6B on the full board. I'm not disagreeing. I just know it's item 6B. It's in my notes for what's upcoming at 7 PM.
That I understand, but if it was as written here, it wasn't motion to the full board. It was just motion for approval.
I think this happens often in finance. I mean, if we go back to last month, we approved a lot of items in the finance committee. Motion is just slightly different. With usually the text, motion to the full board with a positive recommendation, and that positive recommendation, I think possibly the full board text is not always there in finance. It's one of those things I usually work off my notes from this meeting, but if I compare to the full board notes, I don't reread everything that's on the full board agenda, because it's nearly identical to this.
Yeah, my recommendation is this wasn't even, if it was as written here, was not even motion to the full board. It may have been added. I'm not part of the motion, so wasn't listening to this.
No, right now, we're not sending anything to the board to approve for later.
Right, I would recommend you rescind the vote or the recommendation, and then,
My stickle on this is not whether it's a positive recommendation or not, it's that it wasn't motion to the full board, which is what your intent is to do.
correct.
Yeah, the last one,
But
here,
I understand what you're saying.
it's written better in that regard. So we can. So
I'll
how
make
do-
a
how do-
motion to rescind the finance committee approval of the 2024-2025 preliminary budget.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to rescind by Tom Barney, second by Eric Brown. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Okay, so what do you want to change it to? I've got to write it down now for what I would have said is, motion to the board with a positive recommendation to approve the 2024-2025 projected budget
Preliminary budget.
Preliminary.
Oh, it doesn't even, it doesn't say preliminary, does it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. You are correct.
It says preliminary.
Six B.
I believe it should say motion to approve with a pocket positive recommendation to the full board to approve the 2024-25 preliminary budget.
Correct.
And then I believe that the board packet has the correct motion, which says a positive recommendation from the finance committee. I believe that's correct in there.
Yes.
So that
That's
could have
what I'm
been my
searching
error.
for.
Okay, my computer is not open. Do either of you
I'll make a motion to bring forward to the Board of Education with a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve the 2024-2025 preliminary budget.
I will second that.
Okay, motion by Tom Barney, second by Eric Brown. I will read from or correct the Finance Committee meeting notes in the intermission we're probably going to have here. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Item 8B, monthly purchase requests exceeding $15,000 and purchasing/project bid results. B1 is 2024-2025 desktop and Chromebook replacement. Normally, that would be covered by Jeff Crawford, but in his absence, excused, Brittany Altendorf will be handling that for us this evening. Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome. Today, we are coming for the approval of the Finance Committee to go to full board to approve the purchase or the financing of 650 Chromebooks for student Chromebooks at a unit price of $248 with the additional Chromebook educational license for each Chromebook at $29.75, and also the replacement of 61 HP 400 desktops for an individual price of $567. The technology department did go out for bid for this, and they received 3 bids back. They are recommending to go with 2 different vendors. Going with the 2 different vendors gave the best price on both of the items, the desktops and the Chromebooks. Not putting them together was not a better price, so that's why we are recommending 2 different vendors. This would be a 4-lease agreement, 4-year lease agreement, as we have done in the past. Again, these are replacing the ones that are being sent back in July. We did recently, on Friday, receive the bids back for the financing because it did say in the motion that financing would be included if we do go out for a 4-year borrow on this, which we normally do. We received 3 of them back, one of them for Providence, the other one for American Capital, and the other one for U.S. Bank. Providence with a total amount, if the finance and the board approve it, it's for the $215,124.50. That would be a 4-year payment of $58,530 per year. That is the lowest interest rate we could receive. And then after the 4 years, we would have a $1 buyout. The current year that's expiring, we would not have a $1 buyout. It's not built in that lease that's expiring, so we are not keeping those laptops. It would be our goal to, at the end of this 4 years, to keep those laptops because they should be able to last longer than the 4 years, or because the students are paying for the laptop fee, they would be taking them with them when they graduate.
Okay, or is the motion here good as written? Or do we have to mention anything about 4 years or?
Nope, it's good as written.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I will accept the motion.
Make a motion to move forward with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the purchase of 650 Chromebooks from BDJ Tech for $180,537.50 and 61 desktops from TKK Electronics for $34,587, totaling $215,124.50 plus financing, charged to the appropriate capitalization and lease accounts in the general fund.
And I will second.
Okay, motion by Tom Barney, second by Eric Brown. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. And I will accept one last motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, motion by Eric Brown, second by Tom Barney. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned at 6:17 PM.